So I had a response to the question I posted on Instagram, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your spiritual life? And this person said having one. So I wasn't sure whether they meant having a spiritual life or having challenges in their spiritual life. So I asked them if they could clarify. And they said, I was raised Irish Catholic and I abandoned that. I've always been drawn to nature, which has sustained me. I miss the ritual and community of Mass, and pagan rituals seem contrived generally, although I love the community and fun of it. Maybe I'm just overly critical. So I love this kind of thing because when you're certain about your spiritual life, that's the most dangerous thing, I think. Because even though I can talk about this stuff, and I love talking about this stuff, I don't have anything rehearsed. I never know what I'm going to say. And every now and then I stall, but mostly not. Just kind of comes out. Same in the one-to-one work. I mean, I've lots of experience, I've lots of training. But when I'm working, it's not like, okay, I know what to do. I know how to fix this person. I'm always in this deep, confused, uncertain place. And it's very uncomfortable. I've got used to it, but it's not easy. Not a comfortable, feeling of, right, now I know what to do here. And I think it's the same in your spiritual life, or in my spiritual life anyway. I'm always like not sure about anything, which allows me to be very flexible and very fluid with what happens as things change. Because things are always changing, because like the consciousness is, I probably said it before, it's a bit like a light, and as the more conscious you become, the light gets a little bit higher and the circle that it casts on the ground gets a little bit bigger, which sounds lovely, doesn't it? But so you're let's say standing or sitting in the center of this beautiful light, and oh, look at all the things I'm conscious of. That's great. And then you get a little bit more conscious and the light goes up a little bit more and the circle of light gets a bit bigger. It's a bit like the tide going out, as you're uncovering all the old, prams and old bicycles and bed frames, and like, oh my God, this is what you've just become conscious of. And it's always at the edge, the leading edge of your consciousness. It's always uncomfortable and like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. I can't believe I used to think like that, or I used to see things like that. Now I can see things differently. And yeah, that happens enough times and you kind of go, wow, nothing is certain, I was so sure about this thing and now it's gone. Like this person was saying, yay, Catholicism, but then no. And then like, oh, pagan rituals, they sound good. Everyone's having a good time. Everything's great. But then it's like, no. That's, to me anyway, that's the spiritual life. That's the life in consciousness. It's always changing and there's no certainty. And if you feel certain, like I know something, that's not a that's gonna bite you, that certainty, because life has got a great sense of humor, or the mystery's got a great sense of humor, whatever you want to call it. And as soon as you think you've arrived somewhere, it will demonstrate. It's done kindly, but it can seem brutal. A bit of a contradiction, which happens a lot in this kind of life and consciousness. It will just smash that up. And it's not even like it's doing it. It would be like, looking into a river going, oh, I've made this lovely boat. Let me put my boat in this in the river. And the river will just like, you'll just wreck it, Like, about my lovely boat. It's like, is the river trying to teach you a lesson? Nope, the river's just being the river. It just is going powerfully. And that's kind of what it's like, in my experience anyway, of the mystery. It's not trying to teach you lessons. It's not, this idea of like lessons. God, can we stop with that? It's so unhelpful, because, I wrote this meme a good while ago, for as long as you think life is teaching you lessons. You're always going to be in school. It's like, it's not how we are with our babies. We're not I'm going to teach you a lesson about crying. There was a time when that was popular, but thankfully not anymore. And it's the same with life. Life's not trying to teach you a lesson. It's just like the river, as I say. It's its thing. And you begin to get a sense of the river and not to build perfect little boats and put them in there, because that's the nature of the river. So this person kind of going, the biggest challenge in my spiritual life is that I don't have a spiritual life. That's a very spiritual place to be, because there's nothing certain there. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm a this kind of person or that kind of person, That's the danger of teachings, the danger of gurus, of taking everything that the person says as true and not going, is this true for me? I can hear it's true for them. It sounds great. I really want it to be true, but it doesn't really resonate with me. Because everybody, all the gurus, they're just people. They're just like you and me. We've got different amounts of unconsciousness, and like often people who end up on stage teaching, they have maybe not as much unconsciousness as other people, but they've still got it. That's why it always comes around to bite them, They've always got their unconsciousness. So if you just go, whatever they say is the right thing, they're going to lead you astray. They won't mean to. They won't mean to at all, but they will, because they've got their unconsciousness, Plus, the time of the guru is over, as I like saying. It was about 20 years ago. It was still going, but not anymore. There's too many of us. There's too many people who are at a kind of level of consciousness where they just don't need somebody up on a stage telling them what's going on. We just are in community now, I think Thich Nhat Hanh said that, didn't he? He said the next Buddha will be the community. I think there's something in that, that we're all just sort of helping each other home, as Ram Dass said, and that's a beautiful way of thinking of it. It's friendly, friendly just to walk along together and have a chat. And I'm going, this is the way it looks to me. And you're going, well, this is the way it looks to me, in comments or whatever, But it's just me and you, because it all goes on in you, just like it all goes on in me. So this idea of a community, like that you would get in a sort of structured teaching, it's nice, and you can talk about the same thing, but ultimately you're going to die on your own, You're going to die alone. Even if you're surrounded by your loved ones, you're going to die alone. You're going to go through the death process alone, just like you go into the sleep process on your own. You go into deep dreamless sleep on your own. You go into the mystery on your own. So, it makes sense to me to figure it out for yourself. Figure out what resonates for you and embody that. And when it's embodied, then you don't have to think about it, which is kind of what I was going to get at when I was saying I never plan what I'm going to say. I just respond, and it just comes out of me. And half the time I'm listening to what I'm saying going, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that was in there. Because it's embodied. And I've got no one to reference to. I'm not kind of going, I've got stories about, my spiritual teacher and that kind of thing, but everything I say is coming from inside me, So that's quite a lonely, isolated place to be. But as I say, that's the spiritual life, because you have to do it on your own, ultimately. So this feeling of like, God, do I even have a spiritual life? I think that's probably a very spiritual thing to say. It's a very uncertain place to be, which is where all the juice is, all the good stuff is. And I think it's great. And you could tell by the lightness that the person was saying this in their communication, that I think they kind of got that as well.